Imagine a world where the dazzle of private jets, diamond-encrusted gifts, and whispered promises of love conceal a chilling reality, a labyrinth of coercion, manipulation, and unrelenting control. On June 10, 2025, in a hushed Manhattan courtroom, a woman known only as Jane stepped into the spotlight, her voice trembling as she unveiled a story that pierced through the glittering facade of Sean Diddy Combs' empire. Her testimony, raw and unfiltered, exposed a reality far darker than the music mogul's public persona, a tale of freak-offs, emotional devastation, and a life tethered to a man who, she claims, demanded her total submission. As tears streamed down her face and jurors leaned forward, gripped by her words, the world was forced to confront a haunting question. What happens when power becomes a prison and love becomes a cage? On day 18 of the federal trial against Sean Combs, known to the world as Diddy, Jane returned to the witness stand, her identity cloaked by a pseudonym, but her pain laid bare for all to see. She entered the courtroom in a striking maroon blazer that swept down to her ankles, paired with matching pants, her dark hair parted sharply to one side, cascading like a curtain over her face. It was a subtle act of defiance, perhaps, a way to shield herself from the piercing gaze of the man seated across the room. The man she once loved, the man she now accused of orchestrating years of emotional, physical, and sexual torment. Jane's testimony painted a vivid, unsettling portrait of a relationship defined by a stark power imbalance, where Diddy held absolute control over her body, her choices, and even her survival. Jane described what she called a love contract, a $10,000 a month arrangement that kept her financially afloat but emotionally ensnared. Diddy paid for her Los Angeles apartment, a lifeline in a city where dreams often come with a steep price. But this financial support was no act of generosity. It was a chain that bound her to his will. Jane spoke of a life built around pleasing Diddy, where her every move was dictated by his desires. He controlled her image, choosing the lingerie she wore, delicate, revealing pieces that left her exposed in more ways than one. He selected the sky-high stripper heels she struggled to balance in during grueling nights, heels that became a symbol of her captivity. He even demanded the piercing of her nipples, an act arranged by his assistant, Christina Corum, at a parlor of his choosing. When Jane removed those piercings a year later, Diddy's reaction was swift and furious. "Where are my piercings? Where are my piercings?" he demanded, his voice echoing with the authority of a man who saw her body as an extension of his own. The core of Jane's testimony revolved around the hotel nights, a term she used for what others, like Diddy's ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, called freak-offs. These were not fleeting encounters, but grueling, orchestrated sessions that could last up to 30 hours, fueled by ecstasy to keep her awake and compliant. Held in luxury hotels across cities like Las Vegas and New York, in Diddy's sprawling Miami mansion, or even in the supposed sanctuary of Jane's own home in Los Angeles, these nights involved multiple escorts, men and women handpicked by Diddy himself. Jane recounted being directed like a marionette, her every action choreographed by his commands. She was told when to eat, when to sleep, when to rest, and when to perform, her autonomy stripped away in the name of his pleasure. Condoms, she said, were strictly forbidden. When she dared to ask for them, sometimes pleading directly with the escorts, Diddy either brushed her off, made her feel guilty for raising the issue, or lost interest entirely, leaving her to face the consequences alone. One particularly harrowing moment came when Jane described a pattern that recurred across these nights, a ritual that left her feeling degraded and powerless. After sex with an escort, Diddy would refuse to let her clean herself. Instead, he would engage with her immediately, playing with the bodily fluids in a way that stripped her of dignity. Only when he was satisfied would she be allowed to shower, only to be ordered to start again, sometimes with the same escort, sometimes with a new one. On some nights, she endured up to 4 different escorts, each session stretching 3 to 4 hours, leaving her physically and emotionally drained. The toll was immense: back pain from prolonged, unnatural positions, vaginal soreness that lingered for days, and near-nightly urinary tract infections that required regular antibiotics. The baby oil used during these encounters made standing in the mandated stripper heels agonizing, the slick surface causing her to slip and struggle, yet Jane was expected to endure it all in silence. When asked why she never spoke up about her pain, her voice cracked as she explained she didn't want to risk upsetting him. The fear of his disapproval, his agitation, his dismissal loomed larger than her own suffering. Jane's birthday in Miami in 2022 stands as one of the most heart-wrenching chapters of her testimony, a moment that crystallized the cruelty she endured. She had hoped for a quiet, intimate celebration with Diddy, her boyfriend at the time. They dined at Nobu, a high-end restaurant where the lights were low and the atmosphere promised romance. He gave her a gift, a fleeting gesture that filled her with hope. But back at the hotel, her hopes were shattered. An escort was waiting, and the familiar nightmare began. Jane pleaded for a condom, but Diddy glared at her, mouthing, "You better not ask for an expletive condom." Terrified of his reaction, she made a small, involuntary yelp, but complied, her fear silencing her protests. Hours later, after Diddy reluctantly handed the escort a condom and stormed out of the room, his mood shifted. He surprised her with a cake and balloons in another suite, a gesture that might have seemed sweet if not for what followed. Another escort, Cabral, entered, and Jane was forced to perform for hours. By morning, a third escort, Dawn, arrived, marking 3 men in a single night. Sobbing on the stand, Jane said this night hurt more than others because it was her birthday, a day she'd hoped would be hers, not his. The betrayal cut deep, a wound that reopened with every tear she shed in court. The courtroom fell silent as prosecutors played a 9-minute audio recording of a conversation between Jane, Diddy, and an escort named Dawn. In it, Diddy could be heard questioning why no protection was used, his tone sharp and probing, while Jane, her voice strained, explained that she hadn't been allowed to insist on it. Her fear of agitating him was palpable, a recurring theme that threaded through her testimony like a dark undercurrent. Jane identified several escorts in court, each name a marker of her trauma. Paul, a personal trainer who also trained Diddy, his presence a reminder of the overlap between Diddy's professional and personal worlds. Leo, nicknamed Italian for his heritage, a man whose face she could still recall with clarity. Michael, whom she found kind but still unwanted, his kindness a bitter contrast to her lack of choice. And a man from a 2021 night at La Montage Hotel, described as bald, sweaty, and smelly, whose memory made her shudder. Each time she begged Diddy to stop, to spare her, but he pressed on, once blindfolding her to touch Paul's chest as part of a twisted game that left her feeling like a pawn in his fantasies. She described these moments with a mix of shame and exhaustion, her sobs punctuating the courtroom's stillness, a sound that seemed to echo in the hearts of those listening. Jane's attempts to set boundaries were met with dismissal, manipulation, or outright scorn. In a September 2023 text, she poured out her heart to Diddy, her words a desperate plea for freedom. "Ever since I opened Pandora's box, I have never been able to close it. I'm confusing your lust for me for real love. I don't want to play this role anymore. It's dark, sleazy. We need to talk like adults and figure out how we're going to go from here." His response was cold and cutting, a dismissal that stung as much as any physical blow. "Let's just be friends. I'm tired of these long texts telling me what I'm doing wrong." In November 2021, she expressed jealousy after watching Diddy give another woman the attention she craved. Quality time, meaningful connection, the kind of affection she yearned for but never received. His response came in a voice note where he scolded her for questioning his freedom as a single man, insisting the other woman was there only to work out with him, a claim that rang hollow against Jane's pain. By February 2022, Jane stopped responding to his calls after he left her in a hotel room surrounded by the remnants of a freak-off. Empty bottles, scattered clothes, the air heavy with the aftermath, while he jetted off to celebrate another woman's birthday with lavish gifts, a private jet, and a villa on an island. "I felt so cheap," she said, her voice breaking as she recounted staring at an Instagram post of his extravagance. The contrast between his generosity to others and his cruelty to her like a knife to the heart. The financial web of Diddy's control was intricate and pervasive, a system designed to keep Jane tethered to his will. Cash was ever present, tucked into nightstands or delivered discreetly by his staff, Chief of Staff, Security, or Assistant Christina Coram. When funds ran low, as they did in 2022, Diddy would call for more and it would arrive swiftly, a testament to the machinery of his empire. Jane once paid for an escort's flight from Atlanta to New York using her own credit card, only to be reimbursed by Diddy, a detail prosecutors highlighted as potential evidence of sex trafficking given the crossing of state lines. At the Trump Hotel in New York, Diddy's assistant left thousands of dollars at the front desk for an escort named Cabral, further implicating his enterprise in the allegations. Jane testified that this financial dependence extended to her own life. Diddy still paid for her home as of the trial, a fact that underscored the depth of her reliance on him, a chain she could not break even as she stood in court to confront him. Jane's emotional turmoil was documented in her iPhone's Notes app, where she poured out her anguish in private, a digital diary of her despair. In November 2023, she wrote a note she never sent, its words a raw outpouring of her pain. "I'm sorry, I don't want to take drugs for days and have you use me to fulfill your freaky, wild desires in hotel rooms." To cope, she turned robotic during the sessions, relying on ecstasy to numb the pain and exhaustion, to distance herself from the reality of what she was enduring. After the nights ended, she sought solace in small domestic acts, cooking for Diddy, massaging him, cuddling on the couch while watching his favorite shows, or texting "I love you" to maintain the fantasy she believed he demanded. These acts were not just gestures of affection, but survival tactics, a way to hold on to the illusion of a relationship that might one day offer her the love she craved. Yet, when she tried to end the hotel nights, Diddy claimed he didn't remember her requests, despite her pleas dating back to 2021. His indifference was a wound that cut deeper with every dismissal. The jury's reaction spoke volumes, their faces a mirror of the courtroom's emotional weight. Some appeared visibly annoyed or shocked by Diddy's casual dismissal of Jane's pain, their eyes fixed on her as she spoke through tears, her voice a fragile thread holding together a tapestry of trauma. Others glanced at Diddy during moments of described cruelty, his refusal to allow condoms, his scorn when she cried, his indifference to her exhaustion. One juror rubbed her temples head in hands as screenshots from the freak-offs were shown, the images searing themselves into the courtroom's collective memory. Another turned their back to Diddy, focusing solely on Jane, as if to block out the man whose presence loomed so large in her story. The emotional weight of her testimony was undeniable, casting a heavy silence over the proceedings, a silence broken only by Jane's sobs and the rustle of papers as prosecutors presented their evidence. Comparisons to Cassie Ventura, another of Diddy's ex-girlfriends, emerged repeatedly, a haunting echo of a shared experience. Like Cassie, Jane used drugs to survive the endless nights, both recalling Diddy's chilling directive to finish strong when they faltered from exhaustion, a phrase that became a cruel mantra in their lives. But unlike Cassie, who testified to physical beatings corroborated by video evidence, Jane's allegations centered on emotional and sexual coercion, tied to her financial dependence on Diddy's payments. She described moments of fleeting comfort, embracing Diddy's butler before a session, finding safety in his home after the chaos of a hotel night. But these were overshadowed by the relentless cycle of control. The parallels between Jane and Cassie underscored a pattern, a system of manipulation that seemed to define Diddy's relationships, at least according to their accounts. Jane's testimony also revealed her own conflicted actions, a testament to the complexity of her situation. At times, she arranged hotel nights herself, interpreting Diddy's vague hints, like, "I can't wait to see what you have for me," as expectations she had to meet to keep him happy. She once texted an escort named Cabral to fly from Atlanta to New York, paying for his flight with her own credit card, only to be reimbursed by Diddy later. These actions, she explained, stemmed from her desire to please him, to hold on to the man she loved, even at the cost of her own well-being. She told the jury she sent explicit texts, not out of desire but to maintain the illusion he seemed to expect, a performance of devotion that masked her growing despair. The physical toll of these nights extended far beyond immediate pain, a litany of suffering that Jane recounted with a mix of shame and exhaustion. She described suffering from near-nightly urinary tract infections, treated with antibiotics that became a regular part of her life. The prolonged sexual positions caused back pain that lingered for days, while the constant use of baby oil made standing in high heels a precarious, painful ordeal. The nipple piercings, a demand she fulfilled at Diddy's behest, caused discomfort she dared not voice. And when she removed them, his anger was not just about aesthetics, but about control. He had chosen the piercings, the parlor, even the appointment, all facilitated by his staff. Jane's silence about her pain, she said, was driven by fear of his reaction, a fear that permeated every aspect of their relationship, from the bedroom to the courtroom. The courtroom heard of other moments that broke Jane's spirit, each a variation on the same theme of betrayal. In New York, at the Trump Hotel, she arrived expecting a romantic getaway, a promise of dinner and shopping with just the two of them. But on the flight, Diddy texted her, "Do you want entertainment tonight?" His code for sex workers. Devastated, Jane sat in an SUV outside the hotel for 40 minutes, watching as Diddy chatted with his entourage on the sidewalk. She snapped a photo of the hotel's exterior, noticing red lights in the windows, a signal she believed that his staff was setting up another session. When she confronted him, he grew defensive, handed her ecstasy, and said, "I have something coming." The escort was already waiting in the suite's living room, and Jane, despite her protests, felt she had no choice but to comply. "That's a hard question to answer," she said when asked why she went through with it. "I just wanted to make him happy." Jane's testimony was punctuated by moments of raw vulnerability as she described the emotional toll of living in Diddy's shadow. She sent him messages of love, cooked for him, massaged him, and curled up beside him, seeking moments of normalcy after the chaos. But these acts were not just gestures of affection, they were survival tactics, a way to hold on to the illusion of a relationship that might one day offer her the love she craved. Her pleas for change were ignored or dismissed, leaving her trapped in a cycle she couldn't escape. In a November 2021 text, she wrote of feeling jealous and sad after a hotel night where Diddy gave another woman the attention she longed for. His response was a voice note, scolding her for cursing at him and insisting he was single, free to do as he pleased. In February 2022, she stopped responding to his calls after he left her in a hotel room, the remnants of a freak-off surrounding her while he celebrated another woman's birthday with extravagance. The contrast was stark, a reminder of her place in his world. The financial underpinnings of Diddy's operation were a focal point for prosecutors, who painted a picture of a coordinated enterprise. Cash flowed freely, delivered by his chief of staff, security, or assistant. In 2022, when funds ran low, Diddy would summon more, ensuring the machine kept running. The involvement of his staff, arranging flights, booking appointments, leaving money at hotel desks, added weight to the sex trafficking charges. Jane's testimony about reimbursements for escort travel, particularly across state lines, was a key piece of evidence, suggesting a system that extended beyond personal relationships into something more organized, more insidious. As the trial paused for the weekend, Jane's testimony remained unfinished, a cliffhanger that left the courtroom in suspense. When court resumes on Monday, more details are expected, followed by a cross-examination from Diddy's high-powered legal team, known for aggressively challenging witnesses' credibility, dates, and locations. The stakes are monumental, with prosecutors building a case around allegations of coercion, manipulation, and trafficking, while Diddy's defense is likely to argue that Jane's participation was consensual, driven by the benefits of his wealth and lifestyle, a $10,000 a month apartment, a life of luxury, a connection to a mogul. Jane's story is more than a courtroom spectacle. It's a stark reminder of the cost of unchecked power, a window into a world where love and fear blur into one. Her tears, her texts, her desperate pleas for change reveal a woman caught in a web of survival, her voice a beacon in the darkness. As the jury grapples with her words and the world watches a mogul's empire tremble, one question lingers. Will justice cut through the shadows, or will the weight of influence prevail?